Hello and welcome back to the History of Video Gaming. My name is Ben and I am joined by the one and only Wesley. How you doing, Wes?
I am great. Feeling fantastic with an intro like that. How are you doing today, Ben?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, it's like weekend time. It's the one time that I'm actually like kind of chill, that I can chill, and I've been chilling today, so I've been feeling pretty good.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, you say that now, but just wait till I start ranting about how I like ran the same dungeon 10 times in WoW
Oh,
just to
boy.
get one drop. I'm not even going to use, let's be honest.
That's what I'm here for, Ben, to hear about your daily grind in WoW.
Yeah, that's basically all I've been doing, really. Just playing WoW. I've been doing a fair amount of questing, some leveling up, some dungeoning. I'm kind of like getting to that point where I'm a high enough level that I can start to do like dungeon run solo and farm stuff by myself, which I think I mentioned before on the podcast, but
Yeah.
I've been going even further into that now and kind of like I was just today soloing a dungeon from the Burning Crusade. So like kind of getting into those expansions and actually soloing that content now
Oh,
is kind
nice.
of where I'm at. And yeah, it's pretty good. I'm still having fun with it. As long as it's free and I'm not at end game, I think I'm gonna have fun with it. But you know, I'm at level 85 now, so the max is 120 right now. So as soon as I hit that, I think it's gonna get worse, to be honest.
Yeah.
But we'll
Have
see.
less that you want to grind for. And
It'll be harder to grind too. You know, the further expansions you go up, I think it'll be harder for me to just kind of like I won't be able to do like a raid by myself, right?
right, unless you do pick up groups or something. So,
Right. And it's always hard because some people maybe they need that stuff too. Some people don't care. Some people just might not be on when I'm on. So we'll see how it goes. But for now, it's going good. So that's all I've been doing really. What have you been doing, Wes? What games you been playing? I feel like you've been playing a little bit of everything.
yeah, I was trying to think when I started my most recent binge of a game that I'm going to talk about, because I don't think I played anything else this week really except for Hollow Knight, which
Okay.
usually I'm all over the place, but I think I put like 14 hours into it just over this past week. And it's funny, it's hard when we've been recording for a year. I forget which games I've done like a little introduction to what the game is on the podcast. But in case I haven't explained Hollow Knight before, it's sort of a 2D game, sort of falls into the Metroidvania genre where it's like difficult combat and you gotta go around this map and now you unlock the double jump and you go to this place and now you unlock a dash so you can get back to this place and sort of like unlocking different methods of moving, finding different areas, re-exploring old areas, and fighting a lot of bosses, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
But the reason I got back into it, I got a new phone, and I was looking around for cases for the phone, and I saw a Hollow Knight one, and I just figured I'd be a poser if I didn't beat Hollow Knight, but I'm rocking this Hollow Knight case on my phone now. So,
Yeah.
and also it's just a fantastic game. It's one of the many games that there's so much content in a good way, but I just get like burned out and I'm like, no. And then I just drop it for like however many years.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm on the final sprint now. I didn't restart my save this time, so I actually had like a good foundation to work off to make a sprint towards the end of the game.
Okay.
It's been super fun. The combat is crazy hard, at least for me, but it's one of those ones where I have enough of a glimpse of how I would beat each boss after I learn their patterns that it's like the grind is fun as long as I'm not doing it like 20 times and losing. But I've got a lot of like really useful tools now that it's end game, like one that kind of helps me heal passively and stuff like that. So it's been like 6 tries to beat bosses instead of 20 and not even beating them, which has been really nice and really encouraging. So I'm at that point of the game now where I'm just like, they're giving me difficulty, but just enough that it's fun. And then I beat them and I'm like, okay, cool, time to go to something else.
Mm-hmm.
I tried not to look up all the different endings for it, but anytime I know a game has different endings, I tend to spoil myself because I'm like, well, what if I get the wrong one? Which, not necessarily a wrong one in most games, but I read one and I'm like, nah, that's the ending I want. So as much as I could, I looked up how to get the ending that I want. Man, Hollow Knight is such a good game, but I don't know how the heck you would figure it out if you didn't look it up. Like, it's not that hard, but it's like this one NPC who tells you to do this thing in this previous area. You're supposed to know to like after you get this item, go back to talk to her, and then she'll tell you where you have to go next. Which kind of makes sense if you're like really paying attention to the lore of the game, but I just don't know if I would have gotten it. So, but I'm on that final push now, and the ending I'm doing adds like a decent bit to the gameplay and adds a couple different bosses that you don't have to fight to get the normal ending. So I've been grinding through that, and it's been super fun. The whole aesthetic of it, in case you don't know Ben, and also for the audience, is like it's kind of like cute cartoon bugs. I mean, some of them are nasty, but most of them are cute-ish and like
Mm-hmm.
not anime style, but more like I guess cartoon is the best way to describe it. Although it has a very
Mm-hmm.
unique art style, and you're just kind of like in this kingdom of bugs trying to figure out what happened and why there's this weird infection going on. But it's also very loose storytelling, sort of in the way of Dark Souls, where you get some of your storytelling through items that you find instead of necessarily like exposition from characters.
Right.
But it is just all around fantastic game. The fact that I'm so close to beating this and that I will beat it, I'm not going to drop off of it this time, makes me a lot more determined to go back and beat some of the many, many games that I have left unattended. So,
Yep. I feel you there.
yeah, I'm thinking if this mood persists, I might hit up Darkest Dungeon after this and see if I can make a final push to get to. I mean, like the last thing is actually called the Darkest Dungeon, and I've played like 60 hours of the Darkest Dungeon without ever actually doing the Darkest Dungeon, which is a little silly to me. But so maybe I'll actually go back and do that. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been doing and what I'm going to be doing for at least a couple more hours, depending on how hard the last two bosses are.
Right. That's awesome. It's always like good to revisit some old stuff and be like, was this good? Oh yeah, it is still like really good.
Yeah, yeah. And also both Hollow Knight and Darkest Dungeon sometime in the future, although both are unannounced, are getting sequels. So
Oh, nice.
good time to make sure I get those wrapped up so I can be all aboard on the hype train for the sequels.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's super cool, Wes. I feel like we should move into the special topic because we have maybe a bit of a longer one today. We'll see. But the special topic is one that we've done a couple times, and that's kind of checking in midway through the year and kind of trying to determine who the most innovative developer has been, specifically with arcade games, just because that's kind of where the cutting edge of gaming is right now. And that's where we see like big development teams, doing stuff. But I thought it'd be a good time to do it, and I always love this one because we kind of get to reminisce about some of the old games we've played and just talk about who we're most excited to see new games for coming up too. So, and as always, I'm gonna be kind of talking through the games, and Wes is gonna be the one at the end who places the crown, and it's gonna be hard this time, Wes. I think.
Yeah, I've been taking a cursory look, and it's going to be kind of tough.
Yeah. I'm going to start with the companies that haven't done too many games, but I want to at least mention. Let's start with the darling video game company Meadows Games, Wes. And they have made some games, but not that many. Only two from last time that we've done this special segment. They made Bigfoot Bonkers, which I did rate. It was a kind of like Hustle, Co-Motion, or not Hustle, but a Co-Motion and Blockade kind of clone,
Right.
using these big Bigfoot sprites. And then they also came out with Laser Command, which was a phenomenal kind of tank based shooter kind of game. So a really, really cool one, but they haven't really done much more since then, which is a little concerning. But so we have them. We also have Cinematronics, which I want to mention, not because they've done too many amazing things, but I know that they're one of these up and rising companies that we're going to see a lot more from in the future. So I thought maybe I'd shout them out now since we kind of first got their first games since the last segment that we did this. The two that they've come out with have been Flipper Ball, which is some sort of Pong one, and Embargo, which you played, Wes. It was kind of a kind of like a snake game, but
Yeah.
also you're in Cuba.
Yes, but also Cuba and like 8 directions of movement. It was, yeah, I do remember Embargo.
Yeah. Moving on from Cinematronics, we've got Ramtech. They've done 3 games, mainly Barricade and Brickyard, which were both releases of, again, like a blockade or snake style game, and then M79 Ambush, which we just recently took a look at, kind of a shooter light gun game, which is pretty good. Moving on from that, we've got Gremlin, and this is kind of a hard one because almost all of Gremlin's games were released with Sega. I think Sega was the publisher, Gremlin was the developer, so I tried to put those separate from the Sega games. But for Gremlin, they did Hustle, which was a really cool spin on Blockade, as well as Co-Motion. You remember they did Blockade, but we covered that in the last time we did this segment. So kind of furthering that. And then they also did Safari, which you did, Wes, and Super Bowl, which was, I think, a clone of Robot Bowl by Exidy. So, or some other kind of bowling game, I forget. So kind of an interesting little lineup of games there. Not too many, but there's some interesting things. Well, getting into some of the bigger companies now. Let's look at Exidy. They came out with 4 games as well. One was Attack, which was a light gun game. We had Car Polo that I reviewed. It was the car soccer game.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And then Robot Bowl, which is a bowling game, and Score, which I forget what Score was, but
Oh, that was the weird the demolition derby, except you're trying to score at a bar.
oh yeah, that's right. You're right. So a pretty interesting and unique little lineup there. Moving on, I think the next biggest one will probably be Sega or Midway. Let's do Sega first, since we already kind of mentioned Gremlin. But for things that they've done by themselves, we've had Fonz, which was another one I rated that was kind of like a racing game. They also came out with Tic Tac Quiz, Twin Course TT, Crash Course, which were our, Tic Tac Quiz is kind of self-explanatory. The other ones are all kind of racing games that we couldn't play. Bomber, which is another side-scrolling airplane game we couldn't play, and Tracer, which was my worst game of the year last year. So maybe not the best lineup from them, but a fair amount of games nonetheless, and quite a few racing ones. Moving on from there, we got 3 more to go. We've got Midway. They came out with Checkmate, which what was that? It was a clone of Blockade. Then we have Boot Hill, an amazing sequel to the original Western Gun and Gunfight. We had Guided Missile, which was their release of Taito's Missile X, and Desert Gun, which we just reviewed as well, which was another kind of light gun game where you kind of were hunting animals and weird, like Martian-looking creatures.
Yeah.
Speaking of Taito, let's talk about them. They've, I think, took the crown for last year, if I remember correctly. But they came out with Wall Break, Barricade, Flying Fortress, Hustle. All these are clones. They also came out with Cisco 400, which you did, Wes. It was kind of a racing game similar to the Grand Track 10 style.
Right.
They came out with Road Champion, which was kind of another racing game that was more of a top-down thing. They also did Flying Fortress, Safari. They cloned that. I think their biggest one was probably Missile X, which was the original, big missile game with multiple sprites and things. Some really cool ideas there, but a lot of clones too. They have the most on the list of having 9 games, but most of them are clones. Not too many original titles. I think the only ones are really Missile X and Cisco 400 and Road Champion to a certain extent. And then finally, let's talk about Atari. They've always been in it for maybe having the best ones. Keep in mind, we're only looking at the arcade games here, not necessarily the consoles, but they came out with Sprint 8 and Sprint 2. They're racing games. They came out with Drag Race, which we covered. I'm including the key games here too, by the way. Dominoes and Dominoes 4, which were just clones. Triple Hunt, another very important one. Pool Shark, which you did, Wes. Interesting pool game, we'll say.
Right.
And then just recently, Starship One, a pretty cool Star Wars, Star Trek kind of themed space game. So that was a lot to go through, but
It's a lot of stuff.
yeah, maybe I'll just go through one more time quickly and just talk about the very highlights of each. So just to wrap this up, Meadows Games came out with Laser Command. That's probably their biggest one. Embargo from Cinematronics. Gremlin did Safari and Hustle. Ramtech came out with M79 Ambush. Sega did Fonz, I guess is their best one.
Yeah, as far as not really cloning something or
Yeah. Maybe not a great lineup from Sega. Exidy came out with Robot Bowl and Car Polo. Taito came out with Missile X. Midway came out with Boot Hill and Guided Missile and Desert Gun. And Atari came out with Triple Hunt, Pool Shark, Starship One, Drag Race, Sprint 8. So, what do you think, Wes? Of these companies, which ones are the ones sticking out to you that maybe deserve a little bit more recognition as the best?
well, I hate to make it so clear cut and stereotypical for our number one, but going through that list again, it honestly feels like Atari, maybe just for the volume of new games that they put out or the amount of weird stuff that they try,
Mm-hmm.
they kind of get some great stuff out there. Like, I loved Triple Hunt,
Yeah.
even if I was like very focused on that bear animation, but it was so good. The model with the gray shading that they had to make it look better than really like any 2D modeling we'd seen, except for maybe like the giant cowboys in the original like gunfight. But yeah, that was great. And Starship One, which I just recently covered, which is an awesome first-person space arcade game.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I hate to give it to Atari because they're kind of just like, Atari's great, and it seems a little too easy. But I think that's the number one for me.
I just feel like those two games are great examples where like they came out only within a couple months from one another, but they're completely different and they feel completely unique. And just like even further in Atari's list here, like the sprint games, the driving games are way different from those ones. Pool Shark was kind of its own thing. Drag Race was really good, I thought, and unique. So each one is like a fully realized game, I think, that really focuses on gameplay and is very unique and different. So
Yeah.
I don't fault you at all.
I think they do have the benefit, although I don't know where all the other companies are at this point in history, but they're one of the ones that's pretty much like we do video games, we do arcade cabinets, not
Mm-hmm.
some of the ones where they kind of have like their foot in arcade cabinets, but they're still making a ton of pinball machines or like, so
Right.
they can kind of focus all their resources on that. And they keep doing interesting stuff. I mean, they come out with weird stuff too, like Pool Shark, but at least it was a attempt at a pool game. So
Yeah. The physics on that were probably pretty good, right? Or, for the time.
yeah, I mean, it was also what was weird about it, but considering the time, it was good. Yeah.
All right. So we got number one down. Atari reclaims the throne, which is, I think, really great. Now, maybe the harder question was who's number two and three? Where's the silver and bronze?
I know. And that's what I'm struggling with. I think I got to give, well, I'll tell you what my two are right now as I reason through where I'm going to put them. I
Okay.
think two and three got to be Midway and Exidy.
I think that's a pretty strong. I mean, I
Yeah.
would maybe put Gremlin up there a little bit, but
Yeah.
all three of those I think are very good contenders here.
Yeah. And a little skewed by knowing that Exidy keeps doing weird, cool stuff in the future. But same thing where they kind of, their catalog might be smaller in this time frame that we're looking at, but they're all different and weird.
Yeah.
Attack is basically just like a light gun game, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's like the bowling game, there's Car Polo, which is Rocket League in 77, and
Yeah.
Score, which I really don't like, but it's funny, at least.
Yeah.
But Midway, when we're just talking about like Boot Hill successfully following up a great game with a great sequel that improved on it, Guided Missile, which was pretty much taken from Missile X, but if I remember right, they did it pretty well.
And they did their thing where they made it their own too.
Right.
It's not like a straight clone ripoff like a lot of these other ones are.
Yeah. So talking through it like that, I think I would go second Exidy and third Midway, but definitely
Okay.
close with Gremlin for also recognizing what they're doing with creating that whole blockade commotion genre.
Right. I'm right with you there, Wes. I think that's pretty much how I would do it. So you guys heard it here first. I mean, Atari hold the mantle. Taito, what happened?
I
They came
know.
out with like one or two kind of big hitters, and then they've just kind of been sitting back and doing a bunch of clones. Where's that next big hit? And hopefully next time we do this, we'll see a little bit more Cinematronics, a little bit more Gremlin, maybe, or Gremlin and maybe I don't know. I kind of want to see these smaller ones that I think historically we haven't seen much from, like get bigger, you know. So
Right.
like obviously Atari and Taito and even Midway, we've kind of seen these companies. They've always been in that top bit. But Gremlin and Exidy and Cinematronics, these are companies that are like the ones to look out for, in my opinion. So whenever we get any of their games, I'm like super excited, even more than usual. I hope you guys like that. Sega, what's happening? I don't know.
I know. And poor Meadows Games, we love
I
Laser
know.
Command, but it wasn't enough to win a place in the top 3.
I know they need to make more games. Is what we're saying.
Exactly.
Just give us more. But hopefully they'll be back. And with that, I think we'll take a little bit of a break and then jump into the timeline.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the musical stylings of Benjamin. Let's get right into our honorable mention packed episode today.
That's right.
Ben and I are only reviewing one game each and kind of just delving into a little bit deeper some of the honorable mentions that we have, because boy, we got a lot.
Yep. We're trying to get through to the good stuff.
Yeah, don't worry. You won't be missing these too much, and we'll give you just the amount of details that you need to know. But let's start things off with stimulating simulations, which that is the fastest I could possibly say that without stumbling over myself.
You did a great job.
Thank you. This was a book by C.W. Angle that came out in 1977, and it was basically a list of basic programs and games. He states at the beginning that it ranges from 500 to 2,000 bytes of code, which I think is pretty standard. 2,000 might be a bit on the larger end for the time, which ends up being around 40 to 100 lines of code in BASIC. And basically this came with the code already written out for 10 different programs, and then kind of encouraged you to make your own variations of these or combine these programs too to make your own programs. The ones that it came with, though, were Art Auction, which was basically text game, buy and sell paintings to make a profit. Then Monster Chase, which you avoid a monster for 10 turns. And I'm pretty sure these are all text games. Some of them might have had a printout of a map like every turn, but they seemed pretty bare bones as far as I could tell. Next up, there was Lost Treasure, which you basically navigate to treasure based on a map that you're given, but your compass is inaccurate for some reason. Just to throw that wrench in it.
Seems good.
Then you have Gone Fishing, which is a fishing simulator with a turn limit, because if you stay out on the water too long, all your fish starts to spoil. There's actually like a grid map for this, and there's sharks and seagulls that you have to be aware of. So actually kind of sounds like a fun, it's basically text enterprise game, except you're fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And then Space Flight, which is basically a math game where you deliver supplies without running out of fuel and make sure you're on a certain course. Forest Fire, where you extinguish a fire by blocking out spaces on a 9x9 grid, sort of like some of the space games we've talked about before, where you have to eliminate sectors to trap your enemy, except this time you're doing good things and you're blocking a forest fire. And then Nautical Navigator, which is another just math plot, calculating a game with like wind variables. Business Management, which is the most exciting of these 10 games. Just kidding, because it's just it's just making a profit based on varying product and supply prices. Oh boy. And for the last two, we have Rare Birds, which is a bird watching simulator. And I have no idea how that works. It basically just said it's a bird watching simulator, but it must just be like a random text game where it's like, hey, a bird showed up and you like type watch instead of bang or something. No, I don't know, but
Whoa.
that'd be pretty good. No, I was saying that was a reference to Oregon Trail typing bang really fast, not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds like a riveting book, Wes. I mean, I can't imagine going out and buying something and then being like, oh, I can't wait to make my own business simulation at home.
Yeah, they did. He was like, oh, if you combine business management and art auction, you basically have something that simulates this kind of business function. Like, okay, I guess that's kind of cool, but I'm not really interested in it. And there was one more on there called Diamond Thief, which was you question 5 suspects to find out who stole the diamond.
Okay.
That's what we got for stimulation. Nope. Stimulating simulations. I had it spelled wrong in my notes. That's the problem.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a great read. Let's move on. We got some more computer stuff here to go through. These next couple games are going to come from the Interface Age magazine, which is a newsletter that we don't talk about too much. It's not as relevant as like the People's Computer Company or Creative Computing, but occasionally they've got some stuff. So we're kind of right in between July and August, so we're going to do both back to back here. In the July issue, they did a game called Bowl by Bud Schamberger, which is another one of these, like, I guess RNG sports games. You press R, and then the computer decides if it was a strike or a gutter ball or whatever. And I couldn't figure out if there's any choices at all as to how you play the game, or if you just press R and you find out what happens. So I don't know. I think in best case scenario, maybe you put in an angle and then hit go and it tells you what happens, but that's like the best case. And then moving on to the August issue, we got 2 games in this one. One is Tic Tac by Bud Schamberger again, which is a tic-tac-toe game.
And then the second one that we have is Crazy Ball by Elliot Myron, which is basically a handball game, but on the 8080 microprocessor for computers. And it was played notably on the Poly 88, which we haven't really talked about much, but it was the first computer by Polymorphic Systems that could run with a whole bunch of different microprocessors, but also with the 8080.
Yeah, I think that's the first time we've seen a Pong game in the basic language, which I thought was kind of important. I think we might have seen them in like the Chromecco or whatever, but
right, the Chromemco Dazzler, yeah.
But this is the first time where I really feel like since it's for the 8080, you could play Pong on like any computer, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And switching off from our computer games, going into some arcade games, we have Crossfire by Taito. It's basically Taito's version of Bazooka by PSE. The Brazil release was called Bazooka, but by Taito.
So hopefully I didn't confuse it.
Different issues, and they finally took the name Bazooka back, I guess, and even though they copied it.
Yeah. They're like, we can get away with straight ripping off this company in Brazil, but not in like other countries.
Right.
So moving on from that, we've got UN Command, which is by Project Support Engineering. That's apparently a 2-player version of Bazooka, which seems kind of interesting because I don't know if you guys remember, but Bazooka was basically this game that had a giant bazooka peripheral on the cabinet. I mean, when I'm talking giant, I mean like you could put your head in this thing. To think of a console or an arcade machine that had 2 of those seems really crazy.
It's gotta be ridiculous.
Yeah, so that was UN Command. And then after that, another one that we're not quite sure the date, just sometime in 77, is Gorilla by Model Racing, which was a clone of Taito's Crossfire, which in itself was a clone of Bazooka. So
right.
Another kind of Bazooka clone here.
And then next up we have Blockbuster by Elcon. It was a collection of 5 games: Magic Squares, Tennis, Soccer, Gravity Ball, and Blockbuster, which was basically a clone of Breakout. And then also by Elcon, we have TV Pinball. Sounds exciting, and it's a clone of either TV Pinball by Exidy or Ping Pong by Atari, but we don't really have much info on this one.
Yeah, which is another one that haunts me because that TV Pinball line by Exidy, there's been like 8 clones and not a single one has a video of it anywhere.
Right.
but I think that's probably the last one. But that's gonna be me to the first one that I tried to rate. I really wanted to rate this one, but there just wasn't enough info on it out there that I could feel good about giving it a rating. It's a console called the TV Jack 2500 by Bandai, which is already interesting to me.
Yeah.
They have come out with some, like AY3 8500 stuff, but this one's kind of interesting because it uses this line of Texas Instrument chips. I'm going to try to go through this line really quickly at the end, but in order for it to work, it used multiple chips. And because of that, it's a first generation console, but I don't know. It's one of those that it didn't really take off because it ended up being super expensive to develop because of how many electrical components were in it. And that does like make me kind of really curious about what the gameplay was like though, because in order to have so many chips, you're like, oh well, obviously it did something cool, right?
Right.
And it is a little cool. It's basically a collection of space games or space themed games. And unfortunately, we only have really one source to this console. It's a source that I trust a lot and one that I kind of wanted to give a shout out to anyway. It's a blog called discreteconsoles.blogspot.com. And I guess the creator goes by Sly, SLY. And they also have a YouTube channel. They post a lot of stuff, but it's a massive blog and just tons of really great info. This person, I guess, collects these old consoles and posts reviews and pictures and like innards of a lot of them. But just one that I go to every now and then, especially when we have an older console. And there's always just great info. It's one of my top trusted sources, I'd say, even though I can't use it for a lot of things. But when I can, I'm always like, Sly knows what they're doing. So, but basically, Sly owned one of these consoles and posted a little bit about it, but apparently it broke on them.
Oh no.
I know, and I think they have it repaired now, but at the time they wrote up this blog post, they didn't have it for that long, and I couldn't really showcase the games very well. So they posted like one or two videos of the gameplay, but it looks basically the same. I'm not sure if they're changing games in the video or if they're just playing one game. So that's kind of where I was like, well, I can't really rate this if I don't really know what the games look like.
Right.
It's supposed to come with 4 games. The games are called Space War, Phantom War, Space Phaser, and Phantom Phaser. With names like that, I'm a little concerned that they're probably all the same.
I bet you anything those Phantom modes are one of the players is invisible.
I don't know. And then there's 5 levels of difficulty, which I do know a little bit about what that means. But they said that this game had 20 games on it because of those.
Right.
four options and 5 options respectively. But obviously, it's really only like 4 games, and then there's some difficulty modes. The gameplay itself, from the videos that I was able to watch, is kind of like what's a good example? I mean, it's kind of like Pong, except more of like a shooting game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where you're kind of shooting bullets at the other player, but I think you can only move up and down. I don't think you can move horizontal. And then instead of paddles, each player is a spaceship sprite, and the sprite actually looks fairly well detailed, I think, which is pretty cool. Definitely, I would say it's probably more detailed than like a Fairchild game. So it's pretty well detailed, and in addition to just trying to shoot each other, there's also what they call asteroids in the middle of the playfield that kind of fall down or go up from the top. So they're basically just little rectangles that move up and down. There's 4 of them total, but the different difficulty settings I think make them bigger or smaller, and then also make them move faster or slower. So I guess that's the difficulty. But in addition to just kind of trying to shoot each other and having it keep score, the other thing that's kind of interesting about this game is I think this might be the different game modes. Maybe it could be in all the game modes, but it seems like there is some sort of ball wiggle or English on the ball. I'm not sure which one it is, how controllable that is, but the ball or the projectile for each player can definitely move a little bit in the kind of up and down direction. So that's kind of interesting. And then probably the most detailed thing about this whole game is that when a ship explodes or gets hit, the explosion is like really good looking.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's kind of looks like it explodes into 1,000 pieces. Like I imagine like when the Death Star destroyed Alderaan or whatever. That's kind of what the sprite looks like. It's just a bunch of dots, but I don't know. It just looks really good to me. The sound effects are also kind of spacey, so I imagine we'll get into the different chips, but some of them were definitely just for sound effects and space sound effects. But that's kind of all I was able to really tell from the video. So I don't have a great understanding of what all four of the games did. But my guess is that they probably changed the background and maybe added the English.
Right.
But I could be wrong. I'm not sure. So either way, it's kind of an interesting little shooting game, and I'm glad it's not just a Pong one like they've been doing. But as we'll see with how many chips that this actually took to make, I can understand why it didn't really take off. And I think this is kind of getting towards the end of Texas Instruments' attempt at making chips. So let's go through some of these chips here. So first of all, we have the logic of the game, which was the SN76440N chip. From now on, I'm only going to mention the last two digits because I don't want to keep saying 7644 or SN7644. So yeah, so that was the 440. The 442, I guess, added the rocket ship sprite. It just says complex characters. The 43 also did that, so maybe the other players. The 44, it just says complex characters for rocket ship again. So I guess they needed a lot of chips for that. The 45 says complex characters for Gunfighter and Universal Man, which I've got no idea what that means. Maybe it's for a different type of console or game that never came out, but as far as I know, all of these chips were either in just this console or didn't come out. I couldn't find anything specific for any one of them. But then the 46 has complex characters for Exploding Rocket, which we definitely see. The 49 has complex characters for Exploding Helicopter, which I don't know if this game has a helicopter in it, but I don't think it does. The 60 had digital on-screen scoring. The 62 had the same thing, but it only went to 0 and 18. Originally in this game, you can go up to 20. The 77 had complex sounds, which makes sense. The 83 had spacebar obstacle generating capabilities, and then the 84 had switching logic. It just says, I don't really know what that means, but that's a lot of chips, and all the numbers that I didn't say, just they never came out or whatever. So those are the ones that we know of, and all the ones that I thought might have something to do with this game.
Wow.
For sure, I'm pretty sure it had the 83 at least, but it probably had 5 or 6 of those chips in this one console, which is why there's not a whole lot of these. There's no clones of this console anywhere. I think at one time the company APF, or no, was that the console name? There was another company that was trying to do something like this, and they made the prototype using these chips, and they're like, no, we can't do this. But all of these chips are by Texas Instruments, who is not like the best at making chips. They're not General Instruments, they're the kind of main ones. And they're not any of these companies that do the second gen stuff, or even like National Semiconductor, which we've talked about a couple times. So yeah, I'm not too surprised that it didn't take off that much. That's as much as I can tell from the TV Jack 2500. It was one that I was really interested in, and hopefully I did a good job describing the gameplay, but we just don't really know that much about it other than what I said.
Right. Well, it does sound really cool, and at least we could look at it, but it's probably was incredibly expensive and incredibly unwieldy to create, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like one of those things where if like you put it down on the ground too hard, chips would just fly out.
Exactly. But then I guess that takes us to the first one game that I got to look at in depth, which is a new video cart for the Fairchild.
And we haven't talked about Fairchild in a while, I don't think, anyway.
I think it's been at least 3 or 4 episodes, yeah, since we've mentioned them. Again, we kind of just spaced these out. They definitely did have a staggered release, but we don't know, I don't think at least exactly when each cart came out. This is Videocart 10, also called Maze, and just giving some basic background about it on the cartridge itself. It gives a list of all the available games and variations to each game mode, and also how to access them, because you kind of had to do, these are like the Bop It kind of controllers, like the Jedi lightsaber weird controllers for the Fairchild. And
Hmm.
you sort of had to do like Bop It levels of like twist this, push this in, and then hit that to get to this game mode. So apparently it wasn't super easy, but on the back of the cartridge it had a sticker telling you how to do all of it. And there were basically 4 main games in this, and then 3 variations that could be applied to each of those games. The box art itself for this is pretty awesome. It has the traditional Fairchild Videocart background, which is very like 70s and like the whole spectrum of color behind the number 10. But the drawings for this, the theme is it's a maze game and sort of a cat and mouse trying to escape the maze theme. But the mice just like looking in all different directions. They're like wearing like slacks and a t-shirt. And for the main maze picture, it's just the 2 mice with question marks all around them pointing in different directions. And for the cat and mouse mode, there's just this gigantic cat chasing them. It's real funny and real weird, but it's pretty good. And getting into all these different games and the variations for them, there were 4 main game modes. Maze was the first one, the one that the cartridge is named after. Basically, there's a maze drawn on the screen, and you have to escape. All of these were also 1-player or 2-player mode. Next up is Jailbreak, which the maze, instead of already being filled out, there's a grid pattern all the way across the screen. And some of the walls, basically, you can pass through. So the maze kind of like exists, but you don't really see it under the grid. So you have to kind of guess which walls you can pass through, and then after you go through them, the wall disappears. So you kind of work your way through sort of the Jailbreak theme, I guess, like you're digging your way through tunnels or something like that. Next up, we have a real strange one, a blind man's bluff, where the whole maze is invisible, and there's still collision with the walls, and you have to find your way to the exit. It's real weird. There, there is an option in this mode, and apparently in all the other modes, to hold down a button while you're moving to leave a trail behind you. So you could do that in Blind Man's Bluff, so you can kind of see where you've been. But considering you could also do this in a competitive mode where you're playing against another person, it just seems like it wouldn't be a ton of fun. But I'll talk all your ears off about that when I get to my ratings. And then the last main game for this was called Trailblazer. It's basically the opposite of Blind Man's Bluff. The whole maze is filled in, and you race as you go. So similar to Jailbreak, except the whole maze is filled in. There aren't spaces in the grid, and you can kind of carve your way through the maze, guessing which ways are open. So each of these modes, as I mentioned, could be played 1-player or 2-player. Second player, it looks like, is always on the screen, even if they're not playing. So I don't know if that was a hard like mode or if you just kind of decided to play 1-player. There's also the option to enable a cat for each mode, which is an AI that chases you down and ends the game if you're caught. Which is interesting because there's some of these modes that it would work really well for, but it's cool that you have the option for any of them.
Right. It might not be good if it was like all the time, but
No, because some of these modes, you can make the cat move really fast too. So I think having the option to just do 1v1, or I don't know, if you were bored and wanted to do a maze single player, I guess, because they were slightly different mazes. I've seen some sources say randomly generated and some saying it was a pretty large list of mazes. I'm not sure exactly what it did. I think the console probably would have been capable of doing randomly generated, but I'm not positive. But back to the variations, there's also the paranoia variation, where it kind of changes the win condition up so that you still have to escape the maze, but 1 player can only exit the maze if the other player has been caught by the cat. Only one person can win in any of the modes, but somebody has to get eaten by the cat first for them to win. And then there's a strange mode, which people speculate is actually just a accidental feature that they just named as a mode instead of calling it like a bug or something, called double paranoia, where both players can't leave the maze at all. And that's it. You can add a cat to it, but then it basically just becomes paranoia. So double paranoia is just the two players without the cat, except it's still the win condition where somebody has to get eaten by the cat for another player to leave. So just nobody gets to leave.
Well, you could do like you're both trapped. First person to get eaten loses, maybe.
Well, see, I think they branded it as double paranoia because it was just two-player paranoia without the cat option turned on.
Okay.
So I think paranoia would still just be, well, I see, that's where I'm not sure about it because I think in double paranoia, if you added the cat in, somebody could leave the maze as soon as they got one
Oh,
person got
okay.
eaten. I think the difference was that there wasn't the cat, basically, so that the win condition was kind of like defunct. Or at least that's the way I was reading it, but there's speculation on exactly how that mode worked.
Hmm. So I guess like if there's no cat, you're just running around in a maze with no real goal. Is that right?
Yeah, that's why one of the reviews I was looking at said it seems like it was kind of just they realized if you combined these certain options based on like all the possible options you had, you would end up with like this weird accidental game mode where nothing could happen.
That's funny.
Yeah. All these settings could be enabled or disabled at the start of the game. Seems like it was like a complicated sequence of inputs on the controller. And you could also adjust the game speed for any of these, which increased both the mouse and the cat movement. The top speed is like hilariously fast and borderline unplayable. The cat just like finds you in an instant. But it is nice that they have different speed options if you wanted to up the difficulty on it. Getting into my ratings for this, for graphics, I gave it a 1.5 out of 10. Still talking about the Fairchild, so it's got those white background with the blue, red, and greens in it. I really enjoy seeing these colors on the home console, and the Fairchild does that really well, but the Maze cartridge doesn't really do anything to make it super exciting. The maze is just a maze, the mice are just red and blue squares, there's no like design to them, and the cat is just a green square in a green maze, so sometimes it's a little hard to see too. It does seem like there's a lot of variations to the maze, so that's nice because they can at least do that, and maybe that's why they couldn't have more complex sprites. And the different game modes do add a little bit of visual interest in the way that the screen's totally covered or there's the grid pattern, but it's still pretty basic. And the death screen is also like crazy. It flashes and looks like it would be a major seizure warning. And like, I'm surprised they got that passed without anyone being like, hey, that's a problem. But yeah, so that also was
It
not
was the
great.
70s.
Yeah, exactly. But if you win in this, there was the nice feature that before that crazy flashing screen, the whole maze turns the color of the winning player. So it would switch from green to either blue or red, which I thought was a nice touch. But overall, just nothing too crazy for the graphics. Great to see color on home console, but color was about the only thing it had going for it. For sounds, I gave it a 2 out of 10. The sounds are still pretty simple for the Fairchild, but Maze has a nice addition to it where there's this quiet, kind of like low pattern noise that sounds like quick footsteps whenever your square is moving.
Hmm.
So given the fact that your mouse is basically just a square, it at least helps you kind of give it a little bit more character because you have those little footsteps going on. Other than that noise, there's a quick sequence of beeps whenever you hit a wall, which is a nice audio cue for saying you can't go that way in all the modes where the maze isn't already drawn out. And there's a buzz if you get caught by the cat. Nothing really crazy or outstanding, but I thought it was pretty good for a maze game on a console. It kind of did a lot of what you would want from it. For gameplay, I gave it a 2 out of 10. I think the main thing Maze has going for it is the like crazy amount of options and variations. The fact that you can do the Paranoia and Cat AI game modes and 1 or 2 players on all 4 of those games is pretty cool. Maze is pretty simple and a little bland, but I think Jailbreak and Trailblazers are really pretty cool. They bring an interesting twist that kind of bring that little extra life to a standard maze game, so it's not just finding your ways through a maze. Finding your way through a maze. God, that's hard to say. Blind Man's Bluff, on the other hand, just seems like it wouldn't be fun at all. Several people reviewing it said you could kind of like leave that false trail behind you by holding down the button, so you could throw off the other mouse player to think like, oh, maybe it's that way. But I don't know how you would feasibly do that when everyone's looking at the whole screen the whole time and you can see where the other person's moving.
Right. And also, like, you wouldn't know if you were, like, you could just be going down the right path, right?
Right, exactly. Like you would have to like go forward, backtrack, and then be like, okay, now I'm going to leave a fake path. And there's no way you'd be able to actually plan that out in this game. So I mean, I get why they did it. It was probably a fairly easy, like, quote unquote, extra game mode. But having a maze game where the whole maze is invisible and you don't really have any like interesting aids, this kind of feels a little weird. To me, I felt like Trailblazer accomplishes pretty much the same sort of like mystery of not knowing where the maze is, but it gives you that satisfaction of seeing, oh, here's all the places I went before, in sort of like the uncovering the maze as you go. It's weird because it's only a small difference, really, that it's flipped, but it feels a little bit better, I think, to see like the whole path you traveled once you exit the maze. So then going on to relevance, I give it a 5 out of 10. I think it's one of the first maze games, if not the first maze game on a console. So it does have a little bit of relevance there, but it's not really groundbreaking in any way. I'm interested when we eventually get to Pac-Man to see what the inspirations for that were, because it's basically just a maze game with added gameplay taking it to the next level. But I don't think you can really draw a direct line from Maze on the Fairchild to Pac-Man, so I don't want to add any relevance for that. And I don't know if this would really influence any other maze type games in the future, because I think all of those would probably be influenced by the original, like, Amazing Maze cabinet games, because those were still so popular and interesting. So overall, I gave it a rating of 2 out of 10. It adds a lot of interesting modes and variations to what could have been just like super boring maze game for consoles. I would have liked some extra interesting goals and objectives or different gameplay. But honestly, I think it's pretty impressive they were able to throw this many features and variations onto one video cartridge for the Fairchild.
Yeah. You know what? When I was listening to you talk that through, Wes, one thing I was thinking about was like by itself, the game is not anything like too crazy or special, right? I mean, it's just a bunch of maze games. But now that we've covered 10 video carts, I feel like if you had 5 of them, you've got a pretty like nice selection of games for your one console. I mean, I was thinking about like, the shooting gallery games, Space War, Spitfire, Drag Strip or something like that.
And Blackjack too, right?
Blackjack, like just having a maze game by itself, maybe not the most thing, but if you had like all those games on the shelf, like you're like doing pretty good. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people would want to come over and play a little bit of each of them.
I mean, being the pretty much the first of the second gen, it's really done a great job of creating a interesting catalog of games. Like
Yeah,
RCA Studio 2 were not really, they do some different stuff, but it didn't have the capabilities of this console. And they're really creating like interesting things that, like you said, they may not be blowing you away standalone on their own, but as a part of a collection, it's pretty impressive.
I feel like we're really kind of getting the benefits of that second gen now, because like before, if we look at these one at a time, like that's kind of how we do with the first consoles, but like this really has the benefit of all those previous ones as well. It's building that library, like you mentioned. It's like if I already had a couple games for the Fairchild, would I want to pick this one up? I think so. Like it would be worth adding to my collection, I think, assuming it's not like $60 or something.
Right.
But if it were $15, like yeah.
You already have the console. It's not like you're buying a whole new
Right.
stunt cycle console for just one type of game.
Exactly. And with that, let's move on to the next one that I rated. We did another Fairchild video cart today. As Wes mentioned, we're not quite sure when these came out in the year, but this is Videocart 11, and it includes Backgammon and AC Doocy. Which, before I get into this, do you have any idea how to play backgammon, Wes?
Absolutely none.
Okay, I didn't have any idea either, even though I've seen the game board like every time you walk into a store. It's like
Right.
that one with like kind of pointy bits like towards the middle.
Yes.
Let me try to explain how to play backgammon, and keep in mind I learned how to play this today. Okay, I'm not saying I know exactly perfectly how to play it at a good level, but I'm gonna try my best to explain it in a way that we all know. So I'm gonna try to compare it to like shoots and ladders, because everybody kind of knows how that game plays. Essentially, you kind of start at the bottom of the board, you want to go around to the other side. You know what I mean? And it's kind of a dice based system of how you do that. So in backgammon, you roll 2 die, and if you get like a 4 and a 2, like, well, you have to move 2 squares with one piece and then 4 squares with another, you know? And it's kind of like shoots and ladders because you can kind of do some things to your opponent to make them reset, or you're trying to get to the top essentially with all your pieces. So kind of continuing this analogy with shoots and ladders is not quite as easy as just you having a piece and just getting lucky with the dice rolls and moving it up, because obviously that would be completely RNG, and backgammon has a lot of RNG in it, but it has a little bit of strategy. The strategy really comes in, there's kind of like 2 main components to it. The first is that each player has a lot of pieces. They're in the form of checkers in the original game, but even if you continue this shoots and ladders analogy, imagine you just had a bunch of pieces, maybe let's say 6 pieces, and you roll that 2. Well, which one of those pieces do you want to move? Do you want to move the one that's already kind of close to the top, further to the top? Do you want to move the one that's at the very bottom to catch them up? There's some strategy in what you choose there, and then that kind of ties into the second thing, which is imagine on shoots and ladders that you can't land on a space that your opponent already is on. And by the way, with the dice rolls, if it says move 2 squares, you can only move 2. If you can't move 2 because your opponent's there, then you don't move. So you can't move like 1, for instance. So the strategy is really moving your pieces and then trying to block your opponent from getting moves by putting them in spaces where you think it's likely that your opponent's going to want to go there, or that you think it's likely that the die rolls will kind of end up pushing them over in that direction. You could try to block off paths so that they waste their turn. And that's really the strategy of backgammon from a very casual first time, learners thing. I saw there's I guess 5 different ways to strategize in backgammon. I guess it all comes back to 5 different ways. So it's not like chess that has 100 openings for sure. But it's kind of a dice-based RNG thing with some strategy as well. And I actually looked up a little bit about backgammon's history. It apparently is one of the oldest known board games, and its history can be traced back nearly 5,000 years to Mesopotamia.
Wow.
Which I did not know. It's weird to me that they would even have like dice or something that resembles it back that far. But
yeah.
Either way, it's kind of an interesting little game. I wouldn't enjoy the game that much because I feel like it is kind of a lot of dice rolling. I'd rather, just play like chess, which, doesn't really have any RNG. It's all strategy, right? But, maybe people really enjoy rolling those dice. I don't know. But that's backgammon. AC Doocy is basically the exact same game, except the pieces start differently on the board, and then you just play from that position. So
Okay.
It's not really a different game. So it's basically 2 things of backgammon. As far as like how the game looks, the cartridge or the box that the game came in, it looks kind of similar like the one that you did, Wes. It's kind of colorful. It's kind of, very 70s with this like the 11 is like this big 3D graphic of 11.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Gone back pretty far, but then just shows 2 pictures of backgammon, which don't look like it does in the game. Backgammon has this very, I guess, iconic, but it has these like weird pyramid looking things on it. But in this game, they're just kind of straight rows. So there's no like real width to those pyramids. As far as like what else is in the game, I mean, it basically plays backgammon pretty faithfully, and that's kind of all it does. The game board itself, it's set up just like normal backgammon. I think it's like 12 by 2 rows that you move your pieces around. They're basically just straight lines. The lines do alternate between like a dotted pattern and a straight line pattern to try to make it easier to know how many rows that is at a glance, which is nice. The pieces, instead of being checkers, are like these like weird Y looking things. It's basically 3 dots in kind of like a Y arrangement, and that is a checker. And then the thing that actually confused me a lot was I guess you can. I didn't see this in any of the backgammon videos I watched, but I guess if a row is filled, you can just put two checkers on top of one another. And in the game, it makes it look like this, like a U instead of the Y, which doesn't really look like two checkers. But I guess if you looked at it long enough, you kind of would start to remember what it looks like.
Right.
Oh, by the way, I didn't really say. Well, I guess I kind of said what the end game of this is, but you're really trying to get all your pieces to the top, and then when all your pieces are in that final zone, they can be removed from the board, and the first player to remove them all from the board wins. So that's kind of how the game plays, or how you win the game. I mean, that's kind of it. You have a die roll for each player that moves randomly, and that's on the screen. And then you have a pointer, which is kind of like your hand, and you go over to the row that you want to grab a piece from. You press the button, it grabs a piece from that row, and then you move to wherever you want to move it and let go, and that's how you move. And it only lets you let go with whatever die roll that you get. So I think it does backgammon pretty well. I mean, it's pretty faithful to it. I don't think there's anything in this game that you can't really do on the board game, or vice versa. Yeah, pretty faithful backgammon. Let me get into my scores. Hopefully I don't do this too harshly. For gameplay, I just gave it like a 1.5 out of 10. I think the real problem with this game is I'm playing it and I'm thinking, what is this doing that the board game is not doing for me? You know, it's like really nothing. I mean, it looks kind of worse than the board game. It plays way slower than the board game. The best way I can describe it is like, would you rather type on a keyboard, or would you rather type in an email using like an Xbox controller on a keyboard? You know what I mean? Because that's kind of how it is, like moving this hand around and grabbing pieces. Like, I could just grab it with my real hand on a real board.
Right.
I don't think there's AI, so I think you have to play with two players. So not really sure why you would play this over just the regular game, other than just like flexing that you have this console, I guess, and that you're fancy and sophisticated.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does everything that it says it's gonna do, and for that I gave it a 1.5 out of 10. But I don't really know why you would play this over just the normal. For graphics, kind of going in the same boat. It displays everything that you need in order to play backgammon, but like I mentioned, like the checkers looking like a Y and a U, that's kind of hard to tell. I didn't really know what it meant at first. I do think you would be able to learn and be able to read it at a glance after a certain amount of time, but it wasn't the easiest to get into, I'll say. And so for that, I gave it a 1.75, just because it does what it needs to do. By the way, each player is a different color on the screen, so the background is white, the game board is green, one player is blue and has a bunch of blue pieces, and one player is red and has a bunch of red pieces. For sound, I gave it a 1.75 out of 10. And this was actually probably one of my favorite things about the game. You have like your normal kind of beeps and bloops that the Fairchild does when you move a piece and you put one down, but there's actually a sound that plays when you roll the die, and that's actually really fun. It's this kind of like long click clack clangy thing, which sounds a lot like if you would take a bunch of die in your hand and you just shake it up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. And the die rolling in the game is actually, I think, really satisfying, because what you do is you pull the button down and the numbers on the screen just start going randomly, changing between a bunch of stuff, and then whenever you release, it pauses, you know what I mean? So you can just keep it clanging, hold it down, and it just like keeps rolling.
Right.
And I actually love that. I think it's a great way to do rolling die. So I think that's actually one of my favorite parts of the game. But, it's just one sound effect, and the clanginess is not like that unique. I think it's just a Pong sound kind of repurposed. So I just gave it 1.75, but I did enjoy that. And then relevance, I gave it a 3.5 out of 10. Like, it's one of the first, if not the first, backgammon game on a home console, so maybe that's important, but I don't really think we're going to get a lot of backgammon games in the future. And if they do, I think it's equally as likely that they get influence from this, or it's probably more likely that they'll just look at the real board game and be like, how can we do this? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't think it really took off that well. So it's kind of a weird one. I would have loved to seen like checkers or chess instead of this, and maybe that's gonna come in the future. It does seem maybe simpler than those games, but maybe just not the game for me. But a pretty faithful adaptation. I can't talk adaptation of backgammon and AC Doocy, I guess. So, and that's it. That's all that it had for total. I didn't add it up.
Too bad.
I'm just gonna say a 1.5 out of 10. I think that's right where it should be.
Perfect. Sounds good. Yeah.
Did that make sense, Wes? How I
Yeah,
described the game.
yeah, I sort of peripherally knew what backgammon was, and oddly enough, I was watching somebody's stream the other day, and he was playing a mini game in a Japanese horror game, and it was like a Japanese version of backgammon. I now realize, but
Oh, okay.
just to sort of dice roll deciding which piece to move, except you stack pieces at the end instead of getting them all to the end or something like that. So yeah, that made sense, but it's cool that console can do this, but like, would I want to play it? No. I mean, part of the appeal of backgammon, I think, for people who are excited about it, the same with chess, is like getting really cool pieces and boards. I mean, of course, if you're not an enthusiast and you just wanted to casually play it, I guess, but I doubt this was at a price where you could just buy it to casually play backgammon,
Yeah. I feel like it's like if you have your family over for Thanksgiving, and you've got the Fairchild, maybe you break like Drag Race out for your kids, and then when Grandpa is like, "What can this do?" You're like, "Oh, let me show you backgammon. You'll understand."
Oh yeah, there you go.
I don't know, but it does seem like a bit of a weirder one. Anytime a video game emulates a board game, you really have to ask, what is this doing that I would want it to be a video game instead of a physical board game. Like a good example I think is like video games that cover a lot of like back end RNG or die rolls or something like Blood Bowl is a good example that has a lot of these systems that are going on in the background or like charts that you would have to look at or stuff like this, and it just kind of does it for you,
Right.
And that's really nice. It's like perfect for a video game, but like this doesn't have any of that. So I would just rather play the real one with Grandpa. It would be easier and be faster. So it seems like a bit of a weird one, but at least they're trying something different, I don't know. It's not a math game. It's not Pong.
Exactly.
I can't be too critical.
They're putting some unique stuff out there at least.
Yeah. But let's move on from that, Wes. We got a couple more honorable mentions before we wrap it up for today.
Yeah, so next up we have Spiders from Space by Exidy, which sounds fantastic, but it's actually an unreleased prototype of a sort of Demolition Derby style game that would have been very sci-fi and spider based. We can only guess.
They're really trying to do something with these Demolition games. First we had the score game, and now this one.
Yeah, this is a theme I can get behind. I like that.
Yeah, definitely.
And then next up we have TT Block by Taito, just basically a clone of Breakout by Atari.
Yep, and that one also came out in August, and with that we've already gone through all of August, and we're going to start looking a little bit at September, so we thought maybe we'd take a little bit of a head start and talk about Creative Computing's September and October issue. They came out with 2 games in the issue. One was called Rotate, which was kind of like a game of reverse, but it was on a grid. So I kind of compare it to like one of those physical puzzle type games where like you're shifting these tiles around to make a picture. Have you seen those?
Yes, yeah.
I feel like I always see them in like the dentist office or something.
Right.
They had that one, and then they had a game called Nomad, which was a math/navigation game where you are provided with a map of a town and you have to navigate it to Grammy's house, which changes between every play. And basically how you get to Grammy's house is you have to put in a certain speed and also directions, or just say like go north 40 miles an hour, and then I guess it clicks every couple seconds and you have to say stop, where are we?
Right.
And you have to basically just find your way to the house before your gas runs out, which is also an issue, I guess. Kind of a weird one.
Yeah, I like that they they got Nomad, which sounds kind of like cool, but this
Yeah,
Nomad's going to Grammy's house.
exactly. Yeah, the map, by the way, like made no sense either. It was a very strange looking map.
And then next up, we just wanted to mention a couple from People's Computers, the September and October issue. On there, they had Mini Kala, which was a basic version of sort of a Mancala type game. Then there was Sand Pile, which is another Mac Oglesby classic. A strange puzzle game where you're a bulldozer moving sand, and the sand all starts built up in the middle with none on the sides, and you need to shift the sand around to make a uniform surface without pushing the sand off the edge of the grid. And it's hard because you can't just push one pile, you have to push the entire row and column. So sort of just like a puzzle kind of game.
Yeah, sounds like it would be hard.
Yes, yeah, and maybe not fun, but we're always interested to see more Mac Oglesby stuff.
Are we though?
And the last one that we have for that issue is Basic Pilot, which has 2 games in the pilot language, Guess the Number and Count the Squares. Shows one of those pictures with squares within a square where you kind of have to count how many squares are in that picture. It's fun stuff.
Yeah, some education games in pilot, which we shouldn't be too like we should kind of expect that. So
Right.
it makes sense. But that'll do it for us today. I hope you guys enjoyed this really honorable mention field episode. And we also talked a lot about the Fairchild and some 2 new kind of big video cards. Wes, yours had like 7 games on it. Mine had 2 backgammon games. Also, the TV Jack 2500 with its weird spaceship shooting things and asteroids, I guess, which was kind of cool. But then a bunch of computer games and some clones and arcade games that probably weren't released or that we don't have a lot of info for. So that's going to really set us up for next episode. We're going to get into September, and that's really kind of the start of like Christmas season, even though it's 2 or 3 months out. But
right.
we're going to get into it, and I believe September is when 2600 comes out. So I'm ready for that.
Which is an exciting console by Atari.
Yeah, that'll be an episode all by itself, I'm sure.
So make sure to check us out on Twitter, see any updates about episodes going out for the week. Send us an email if you have any questions, and take a look at our website, which we're always updating with all the reviews that we've done in the past.
That's right. And with that, we will see you guys in the next one.
See you next time.